Hi there, and welcome back to On Thriving Astrology and More with me, your host, Taylor Shuler. Today, I am here having the privilege and the absolute pleasure to talk with three wonderful, amazing astrologers. We have Stormie Grace, Amir Bey, and Leigh Samuel. So thank you all for joining me for this roundtable discussion in honor of Black History Month.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah. So let's just dive in. If you can tell us your big three, what kind of astrology you practice and house system you prefer, how long you've practiced or studied, if you're still studying, not practicing, where you're located, if you're in person or online, and where people can connect with you. So who wants to dive in first?
I can. Okay, so my big three, I'm an Aquarius rising, a Libra sun, and a Sag moon. I practice traditional astrology. I see house systems as kind of like when you go to an optometrist and they're asking you is like lens 1 or 2, 3 or 4. And so I like to go back and forth with different house systems to look at a different focus. So I mostly use whole sign, Regio, and sometimes Placidus. So a little mixed bag, but I like it. I'm a big math nerd, and seeing angles is my thing. So that kind of leads into what I go by. I picked the name ARC Astrology. ARCs are really important to me, ARC, the mathematical term. So you can find me at the arcastrology.com and at the handle the ARC Astrology on TikTok, Twitter, everywhere, Facebook. I'm a newbie. I started studying right before the pandemic hit. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm somebody with a loaded 11th house and a loaded 9th house. And so studying has been very fun. I'm to the point now where I have to branch out, reach people, and really kind of meld all the studying that I've learned together with real life. So it's been really rewarding. So yeah, that's me.
That's great. And if you are comfortable sharing, where are you geographically located?
Oh yeah. So I'm located in the center of the US, Omaha, Nebraska. So it's an interesting place to be an astrologer. So that is definitely something I reflected on before tonight. And I do online offerings, but I also do things locally in the community, which has been a lot of fun.
Very nice. Thank you. And welcome, Leigh.
Thanks.
Stormie, you want to go next?
Yes, sure. Okay, so my big three is I'm a Taurus sun, I am a Libra moon, and I'm a Virgo rising, and that Libra moon is stuffed in a really nice Libra stellium, so it's a busy second house over there. And yes, I practice a mix between evolutionary and psychological astrology, and absolutely love both of them. And I came from more of the Stephen Forrest line, but then ended up falling a bit quickly into the Till line as well. So I've got a nice little mix of what it goes on over there. And I am currently in Colorado and have been. This has been the base of my practice, but I am preparing to move to Spain in a couple months. So then I'll be practicing over there, which is, I'm really excited to have that experience and get into that cultural lens and see how it's different than practicing in the United States for sure. I practice online, I practice in person, I teach, I travel and teach. So I'm doing all of that. And God knows I am somewhere on the internet tonight in a cheetah print outfit talking about astrology.
Yes, you are.
I'm out there and I live and breathe and die on YouTube. So that is that's how I roll. And house systems. My primary house system is Placidus. I love it. I can hear it. I don't think there's anything wrong with the other ones. But if I'm doing a specific technique or I'm looking at perfections or something like that, then I'm going to switch to a very traditional, whole sign house system. So
makes sense. Thanks, Stormie. Amir?
I'm Aquarius Pisces. My solar return was on last Sunday.
Awesome.
Cancer rising. And my moon is Aries, and so my moon is in the 10th house. So it's not quite elevated because my sun and moon, and the midheaven is at the midpoint between my sun and moon. And I began as well, I won't say as a tarot reader, but that was my first occult study was tarot, and I was looking at Aleister Crowley, that deck, and then maybe that was in '68, and then in '71, I was living in a mountain commune in California, and somebody brought up, some books every now and then, like people would bring things, and two books came up there that really changed my mind. One of them was George Jackson's Soledad Brother, which are a lot of essays that he wrote. And the other one was the personality, or excuse me, the Astrologer Personality by Dane Rudhyar. And I said, wow, this is, this is really something. Now he's, very philosophical. And so that was the thing that really turned me on, though. And then from that point on, I really wanted to learn astrology. And that was in '71. And then all these books just came to me. My friends, oh, he's learning astrology. And one hard-nosed guy said, you can't turn back once you start, I mean, you can do anything you want, but that's how I did it. I mean, and at that time, of course, there was no computers, there was no YouTube, there weren't even hand calculators. So we had to calculate everything by hand. I can't say that I'm like, what am I traditional, whatever. Some people might say that I'm traditional because I use classes, for instance. But actually, I'm not traditional about anything I do. I'm a visual artist, and this is all my work, astrology stuff back here. And so I combine my visual work with astrology. And that way I'm really combining two important parts of myself when I'm doing it. So maybe I could say I'm an occult artist, I guess, let me see. Years ago, I'm going to just say this one thing here, and then and that is that when I was in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is one of my hometowns, I went to Michael Irwine's place, and he was telling me about heliocentric astrology, and he was saying, well, see, heliocentric astrology shows that you're much more quiet than you are, but geocentric says you're really talkative. But I can see, and actually he made a mistake, because really I was just listening to him. Sometimes I don't know when to stop talking. Okay, so that's me for now.
That sounds great. And did you mention where you're geographically located?
Oh, I'm in New York City. I was born here in New York City. I lived also in Ann Arbor, Michigan. That's where my mother is from. And when I was 19, I went to California. And so California is really where I became not only an adult, that's where I understood really that I was an artist, that I was an astrologer, that I was an occult artist. And so I look at all three of those places as being my formative places. But New York City is where I am.
Wonderful. So we have that in common a little bit, because I was born and raised in New York City, and I've lived around Manhattan in different places, and Nassau County as well, and upstate New York. And I'll just say that I take a liberal arts approach to astrology. I switch between house systems, start with Reggio and Campanus, move to Koch, do whole sign. I'll look at Placidus if someone wants me to look at Placidus, but just to see how they're looking at their chart. I practice Hellenistic. I've studied, William Lilly and Christian astrology for horary, evolutionary, just kind of run the gamut. Whatever I learn, I kind of just synthesize all of it together. And I've been a practicing astrologer for 3 years. I am officially a certified professional astrologer from OPA. Hey, which is exciting. That's a recent development for me. My big three is that I am a Capricorn sun, Scorpio moon, Pisces rising. And I'm currently located in Tucson, Arizona, and doing online offerings, except for when I am teaching in person. So that's me. So curious, Stormie, you mentioned some of your inspirations. Amir, you mentioned some of your inspirations. Leigh, who are some of the people who have inspired you and have been role models to you in the astrological community?
Well, I have to give it to Sam Reynolds. He is how I got my start. I've always been interested in astrology, but it wasn't until I saw him that I realized, wait, you can study this, you can do this, you can take classes. So it just opened up a whole nother world for me. So I started formally studying with him back in 2020, went through all the courses he possibly had to offer, and then branched out from there. But yeah, I would say he really inspired me to go forward and just kind of open my mind up to different thoughts, different studies. So I am really interested in moving towards medical astrology, but I think from what I do for my day job, which is a pharmacist, I know that that takes a lot of time and a lot of practice. So right now I've been doing a lot of horary actually, and kind of moving in between general studies, but I'm fascinated with it all. So
Very nice. Thank you. And Amir and Stormie, any other role models that you want to acknowledge?
Astrological or any?
I think astrological.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you this, over the years, there's people that I liked. Some of the people that I began studying, were kind of old then and really old now, like Mark Edmund Jones. Very complicated, very dense way of writing. I mean, you got to really like read this cat over and over again. And Manny Palmer Hall. I mean, all of those people that were like, because I started reading, studying in '71. So these were people that that's who the books were happening now. I'll tell you, I like Robert Hand. I like what he was doing with the like planets and composite. Eberton, I like Eberton with his midpoints. And actually, Hand, there's certain things about Hand's concepts that were, let's say, putting midpoint work in use, like in relationships. And then Michael Mukasey, there are a lot of different people. Now, one thing that I got into at maybe it's like in the '90s, I thought, damn, where are all the young artists? I mean, young artists, musicians, the astrologers. I mean, there's no young people are studying this anymore. Me and other like older astrologers were wondering and fearful. Like what would the future be for astrologers? And like at that time, all of the people that I knew who were astrologers, it wasn't like we have now. Where there's the internet. And there's just all of these different ways that you can contact people in different organizations. At that time, it was just like, well, my neighbor next door, Virgo with Cap Rising and Libra Moon, which is really the opposite of me. So she would study and write everything out. And then like when she calculated a chart, because this is like 70 something. And, like I didn't want to go near the paper because it's so carefully written, but now it's just like, yeah, you want to chart 20 seconds and it's calculated, but in those days, it was really like, like you had to do the chart, or if you had it ordered, then it would come to you in the mail, like that. So those were the times that my earlier years for that. Speaking of Sam Reynolds now, see, he, I'm on Facebook, and one day he emailed me and just said, hey, you should check out Nisba, because this is, and I did. I said, oh, wow, look at all these Black astrologers, all these young astrologers. I mean, there's, like so many, like I was just really amazed. I mean, I just not, and since that time, I've been very much aware of what astrologers are doing. I don't really trust YouTube so much because I'm more into books. I like to read what people are talking about. But that's just maybe this how I developed.
That's wonderful. That's a great list for folks to read, research those names and check those authors and astrologers out. So thank you, Amir. How about you, Stormie? Any other role models you want to acknowledge?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, Stephen and Kathy have been my teachers, and so they just have my heart for sure. But definitely Sam Reynolds is, he's the guy. I don't even know what else to say, but Sam's the guy, and he's definitely been really encouraging. And I know there have been a couple times I call and have developed a nice friendship there, so we can go back and forth and talk professionally and personally through situations, and get different angles on things like that. So that's been great. I love Omari, brother Omari. He's one of my favorites too. But I have to say, like, looking at my chart and how I'm made, I am a natural broadcaster, and language is the love of my life. So the people that I have gravitated to be really inspired by are like Terrence Gardino. He was one of the original YouTube astrologers, taken, a traditional craft that he started learning offline, obviously, and then brought it. Nadia Shah began to do that as well, and so in the realm of how I serve, looking at the broadcast people have been really, really inspirational for me, in addition to, the people that I'm sitting there reading with. And I mean, my biggest inspiration, I think, over this last couple of years has been Demetra George, because I'm highly focused on the lunation cycle and how that plays out in our lives. And my students, honestly, and people in general, even the ones that are not studying with me, like people studying and having the courage at this time to come up and out and realize this is a real profession and you can be a part of it, or listening to the call to come out. That just blows my little hairs back. I like it. So
yeah. So on that note, what was it like for you coming out and your experience of learning, practicing, and coming out as an astrologer, especially in the context of the African-American community and being a part of the Black community? What was that like? What was your experience? I'd love to know more.
Yeah, sure. Well, for me, I didn't come through a lot of the struggle of it. I'm Black, obviously you can tell that by looking at me, but my family's also German. So we have had a mixed race situation, a mixed cultural situation dynamic in my life for a very long time. So for me, I was always around different cultures and learned different languages and things like that. So to be a Black astrologer really wasn't a big deal. You know what I mean? Now, in the sense of my family that is here in the United States, we're all judges, lawyers, cops. I mean, they did all of that, one run for Senate. And I was like, well, I'm going to go ahead and be an astrologer. So in that way, in my family dynamic, they supported it because they always knew how I was built. My clairs and my senses have been alive, awake, and aware since I was very, very little. So they always knew that I walked between the worlds in a way that maybe they didn't. And there's not a plant that I don't talk to, I mean, they got some clues early on. But for them, it was more the fear of, we've never actually seen this be successful. And I went through traditional academia as well and brought astrology to regular academic business and got my doctorate degree there. And they were somehow thinking I was just going to be a business person because they couldn't see the vision of how astrology would come together and be an actual profession, especially being a YouTuber. So my experience with the Black community per se started in my own household, with them not understanding the vision, of what this could be and what I was building that was very different from the way that they experienced it. But out in the streets and in my local community, I don't know, I have not struggled saying I'm an astrologer because I just don't give two dirty tacos. Most people aren't paying my bills, so what do I care about what they think about what I do? And I show up and I try and give with love to all people, regardless of what their work is. So I found it very easy to navigate in the world out there, and hopefully, within the Black community as well. I don't think I've made anybody mad this week,
I hear you. I feel like my experience is similar, Stormie, as well. I am Black biracial, and so I grew up with a family that's mostly Irish on my mother's side and Irish American, and so I didn't have that experience with my family. But again, being the first to do something new and different, and why don't you be a doctor? Why don't you be a lawyer? Why don't you be in business? Why don't you just do your HR kind of a thing? And actually, I only recently just had my first experience, and I feel very fortunate and very privileged to have just had my first experience where someone sort of ended a conversation with me because I said, I'm an astrologer, and they said, we will not work with you because you do astrology. And I've been extremely privileged to be able to keep a 9-to-5 job while I'm building my astrology business. And they are completely aware of the fact that I do astrology and have a YouTube channel and a podcast and things like that. So Leigh, curious about your experience.
Well, I'm rounding out the trio. So I'm bringing a different mix of culture, but I am also biracial. I'm Black and Jewish. And so I feel like my lineage on the Jewish side has been a very long line of mysticism and being very comfortable in our family with that knowledge. I like what you said, Stormie, about walking in between two worlds. Like that kind of merger is kind of commonplace in our family. So it was never weird that I was interested in anything like how Amir was saying with tarot, or I've liked many different things and it's been embraced. However, the Black community where I'm located, it's pretty traditional, and sometimes it can be seen as a little controversial, maybe devilish per se. So I've kind of learned to respect how people feel. I don't hide that I'm an astrologer, but I also don't push that agenda. And I'm comfortable in my own identity that if people want my advice or they want my services, they'll come find me. And then also I work a traditional job in the medical field. And so sometimes that can be also weird. It's interesting from a perspective of coworkers, colleagues, where they're kind of like, oh, what do you do? But it's a very math-based profession. And so they can respect that when I start talking about the different math that's involved. So it's been interesting. I feel like from my start with Sam inspiring me, and you three also inspiring me too, it's important for me to reflect back on that and realize you have to just be who you are, and whether you're aware of it or not, that's being a Black astrologer, and that's important. And it's important for young people, like Amir was saying, where are the young people? What's going on? The upcoming generations, that's important for them to see what we're doing, how we're doing it, whether it's well received or not, it's still being observed. And to me, that's important.
Really good point. Thank you, Leigh. So Amir, you mentioned that you started reading astrology books and studying in about 1971. And I think from an astrological perspective, that means that you're just about at your Chiron return for studying astrology. So I'm curious how this question resonates with you with that little bit of extra context there. You know, Chiron was a great astrologer and also known as the wounded healer. And the question is really about, you know, this thing that's kind of wounding, is that the fact that you want to be yourself, to be an astrologer, do what you love, share your passion. And many people have struggled with the ability to be out and open about it. So I'm very curious to hear your experience.
Well, I'm bioregional. That means that I was born in New York and I grew up in New York City in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And then when I was 19, I went to California. I was a member of a very wild group before I left called the Motherfuckers on the Lower East Side. And we were very wild, okay? I'm not going to go into everything that we did, but that was the culture that I learned, or that I existed in astrology. In other words, the people, once I got into the occult and everything like that, I was not around people that dissed it or poo-pooed it or anything like that. That was my tribe. You know, I was at Woodstock, you know, I mean, I'm not Woodstock generation, but that was the culture that when I started developing my interest in tarot and in astrology and the I Ching, there was nobody around saying, well, why are you studying that? Because I was in these communes and that's what we all did. So and then this was like from 68 to 71 before I really started studying astrology. And so that was part of my and then anybody that asked me a question like, well, why are you doing that? that was not that I was doing so many other things that other people didn't do. So that didn't really strike me as being anything, like, I'm an astrologer, and anything, I guess this is my Aries moon, but anything that I'm really involved in, I embrace it. Everything that's meaningful, I taught myself. Now, that does not mean that I'm against degrees or against any of that. I mean, I come from an educated family, like for everybody, it's got degrees in something, But for me, I always said like, hey, I want to carve this piece. I want to do this. I want to go to California, and do all these crazy things, So that was me. That was my orientation. But in terms of, and actually my sense of who I was in an occult sense was more advanced in my understanding of what it was to be Black, as a young man. I mean, we all go through this really, like, for instance, I mean, everybody, people here are saying, well, I'm biracial and all that, but actually everybody in America is biracial, because, we grow up, we look at the media is pointing things at us and saying, well, this is how everything is. And so all of us, even white folks, are biracial in that way. I mean, the culture of African Americans is very pronounced, and all of us are affected by it. So I don't really look at, I'm an internationalist. I mean, I've lived in many places. My late wife was from Martinique, born and raised in Paris. My son lives in France now, so I'm not, those kind of things are not something that really bothers me, or that I think about. And so one thing that I began to learn, though, eventually was that, wow, like there's a lot of stuff going on in our history, as Black people. And the more that we understand that, and the more that we, whatever we're doing, whether we're a plumber, or if we're a lawyer, if we're an astrologer, there's certain needs that our community has, And so, for instance, now, Stephen Forrest, I like what he does. I think he's a great astrologer. But I was reading his book, the Book of Neptune, which I've got right here, and he said he has one part there where he says, well, what if you were on this island and it was just 1,100 racist white skinheads, Nazi skinheads? What would you, I mean, eventually, because of your Neptune something or other, you would eventually adapt, and you would understand them, and maybe you might even join them. And I'm saying, no, buddy, if I'm on an island with 1,100 Nazi skinheads, I'm going to be looking for a place to hide. I'm going to be climbing a tree. I'm not going to let those people even know I'm on the island and join them. See, but this is something that, and he's a great astrologer, but I'm going to say that as a Black man, if he was a Black astrologer, he would not come up with that analogy. He would not say, well, imagine if you're on an island, because any Black person, if they're on an island with skinheads like that, they're thinking about like survival, So that's why it's very important for Black people, Black astrologers who understand many aspects of life to another Black person, that that we are able then to communicate to people who come to us for information, or so we can't just say stuff like that really distracts people, and that's one of the values of us, you can almost say like a mission that we have, which is to help. We're helping people when we read, charts to them, we're helping them. And so we help Black people, who are under so much stuff. I mean, really, the more that I live, the more I see just the depth of our limitations put on us by society, And so if somebody can then give a reading that's helpful, now I've done many readings and actually I call them tours in Japan. I have a kind of a following until the pandemic. I had a pretty good following in Japan. And one thing that I got from reading people in Japan is how much they really needed someone to tell them it's okay to do what you want to do, and follow your instincts, or because in Japan, people are told not to do those things, you know. So here I am, a Westerner, a Black man, you know, and I'm reading to them. I've designed my own tarot decks. I'm reading my cards to them. I'm doing coffee readings for them, and they really, I can just see how much I'm giving them, you know. And this is what we have as astrologers to give to other people. We can give them a perspective. We can help guide them, you know. And so that's what I see as being a Black astrologer. And no matter what, I mean, you know, you can say, well, I've been studying now for so many decades, blah blah. But you know, if you read somebody, it doesn't matter like how many decades you've been doing it, because if you're on it, if you're giving somebody help, you know, and you know, then that's really what's important.
Yeah.
So
Thank
yeah.
you. And I think you've addressed some of the next question that I wanted to ask, which is, how has astrology helped you to thrive, and how do you help your clients or others to thrive with astrology? So you've given us some good points there, Amir. Stormie, I'm curious what your take on it is.
Yeah, well, astrology has definitely helped me thrive just in terms of being what it is. I have never been afraid in my life that I would ever be without astrology. I mean, I found it so young, and it was like in this lifetime, I had come back to something I had done 100 times. So I never felt like, oh my gosh, I have to run towards it. I have to really study. I have to do any of these things, because I've just never been afraid to be without it, you know? So in that way, it's actually helped me by just being what it is, which is a part of the cycle of nature. And it reminds me that I too am just of nature, and I move and I groove with those cycles. And I got a cool roadmap that can kind of help tell me, you know, where I'm at in that cyclical journey. So in that way, in a very esoteric way, it's a grounding for me to reconnect. But also in other ways, astrology has helped me thrive by financially changing my life. You know, when I stepped into doing what I'm doing, you know, man, my life, Stormie Grace wasn't always Stormie Grace. Listen, I was poor. That's what it was, right? And that was my life. I loved what I did. I worked at a radio station, and I loved it because people paid me to talk. But I was not going anywhere fast. And that was not going to be entirely helpful to my family and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, right? But astrology coming in and being an official practice and treating it like a business. Astrology has absolutely changed my financial life, and it's changed my legacy life as well. It's, you know, I'm picking up my family to take them to go see the world, not to wonder about it. That's what astrology's done in my life. And that's a really big deal. It's allowing me to retire my mother, should she ever choose to do so. God bless her. She's a Taurus also, so she'll never stop. You know, so it's done that. It's also, I think, on the other side, helped me just realize that people are people. We haven't done any new stuff. We haven't committed any new sins. We haven't done any new stuff since crushed grapes. And so it lets me just quiet and be with another person, human to human, and understand and get in there with them and give some guidance. And that's what I do with my clients is, you know, I first of all meet them where they're at, and then hand them the skill of astrology. And when they can't take any more of that, or that's not how we're connecting officially, then I can slide that to the side and just be a person with another person and speak in the space of our nature. And we come to solution, you know, and then we patiently await developments until we get to connect again. So, you know, I think that it's very dynamic, because I'll say this too. I have found out over the last couple of years that just by doing what I'm doing, there are people that look like me who have been encouraged to come out. You know what I mean? I didn't come out here to necessarily be encouraging for any type of astrologer. I just came out to own the role that I signed up for this time, and to do the work and to lead that with love. But it's helping, it's working. People are thriving, and we're doing that just by being, you know, how we are. So I don't know. It's been good to me. I'm trying to be good to it.
I think you are. I think you're doing it really well, Stormie, and that's huge. So thank you for sharing that. Leigh, curious how for you, astrology helps you to thrive, and how you see it help others to thrive as well.
I think discovering astrology and in a more comprehensive form has been pretty cathartic for me. I'm somebody natally who has Chiron on my IC, and it really brought it back for me. What am I doing? How am I doing it? I've always felt a need to be a healer and to help people improve, or to help them feel, just at a baseline, feel better. And so I have been a pharmacist for 16 years, and I'm like, where are we going? What are we doing?
Mhm.
And I think astrology as a tool, with it, I'm really interested in the math and the energy that it can harness and bring it to a more comprehensive connection with the universe. And then how am I doing that? How am I offering a message to people? How am I piecing together my own life? And so it's been very rewarding for me to sit in front of people, or to Zoom or whatever, and be able to pick out those messages and to deliver something concise to people that makes sense. And so I think it's just, I'm in awe of it because of that, with the energy. I'm, like I said, big math person, and the fact that astrology can take the energy of the world and the math equations that I've loved from my current career as a pharmacist, and then turn that into something that connects you to the earth and the universe. It's pretty awesome to me. So yes, astrology has helped me thrive, and it's helped me give myself and other people a lot of meaning, and served as a tool to help people heal.
I love it. I love your focus on both the healing and the mathematics, more of the analytical and scientific part of astrology as well, because I think it's really important that people see examples of all kinds, especially those that have more of a quote unquote traditional rigor, right? Which is a controversial thing for me to say. I'm just going to say, I know that's a controversial thing, but the science, the math is really important, and knowing that it's grounded in that way. And we've all talked about grounding, I think, as well. So Amir, I'm curious, from your experience of being in the astrological community, we've mentioned the International Society for Black Astrologers, but what are your thoughts on how the astrological community could improve on inclusivity and access for people of color? And also just what has helped you to feel welcomed or have a greater sense of belonging?
Well, I think one thing that, going back to what I was saying about a mission, there were certain times where in the beginning when I was studying astrology, and then maybe I didn't do very much with it. And then I would go back to it, I would say, yeah, wow, this is really something, and I'm helping people. I mean, aside from, like, let's say whatever gifts I might have in it, using it, this is a service. And so this is something that when I do a reading for somebody, that this is what I'm doing. I'm providing something that people need. And also I need it too, because for me to understand life, when I'm reading somebody's chart, I'm really understanding something about myself. And also, I also see that I've had readings where, like say, maybe I do a lot of people who have Mercury, like 3 or 4 people with Mercury on midheaven, or then like they're becoming waves, and then, or maybe Mars in the first house, like 2 or 3 people like that. So why is that happening? It's because I have to learn. It's something about those combinations or placements that I'm supposed to learn at that time. And so this is part of it too. It's just, what are we learning? Not only what are we providing for people, but what do we know? What are we learning? And I have to say that, I make mistakes all the time. I tell folks, I'm not really a wise man. I can read these charts, I can read the tarot, but I'd be messing up too. I'm not the Buddha. Maybe in a few more lifetimes or something, but not right now. But this is one part of it. Now, I also have to find peace. In other words, I have to know when maybe I'm not supposed to say anything to anybody. you know, like on Facebook, you know, somebody will say something and they'll try to bait you with well, I believe in this or this concept of that, you know. And I think it's really simpler is best, you know. And so I don't really like how sometimes in astrologers will say very personal things about another astrologer when they're discussing something, a certain point, you know, like, you know, and then it becomes personal. Yes, well, you know, in other words, like, you don't really know what you're just this and that, you know, this is not pure astrology, or this is not, or you're not really, you know, and I really don't like that. I you know, it's like big Indians, you know, like, you know, in Gulliver's Travels, you know, like these two groups of people were fighting over which way to crack an egg between the small end or the big end. So they call them big Indians and the small Indians, you know, like, and sometimes astrologers get very petty, I think, about, you know, like, what is the correct form? What is the best house system? You know, and really what works? How are you, you know, how are you interpreting it? And what are you giving to the other person when you're reading them, you know? And the proof is in the reading, you know, and that's what really counts, not this other stuff, you know, because the other stuff is you know, you take, these are all tools, and so you use the tools that you're familiar with and that are helpful for other people, but it doesn't mean that you have to you know, like subscribe to some other concept. And so, like, I was just thinking, you know, like, Leigh, like, for instance, you're a pharmacist, you know, imagine, you know, you have a background in pharmacy and you have, and you're doing astrology. That's like, wow, imagine how many astrologers are pharmacists, you know, like, and see what I'm trying to do, like, because I've been studying Egyptology since 74, and I've gotten a lot from it, you know. And so I did a series of calculations for an Egyptologist who wanted to know about the moon phases of the moon, like 3,000 years ago, because this is when they would be celebrating, you know, like certain important lunations. And so the guy, he's a very well-known expert on the Egyptian calendar. So he had me and an astrophysicist who had a different program to study when the new moons were on these given dates that he gave us. And, you know, we came up, because really it's simple math, you know, it's no big thing, you know, but we came up with the same dates for this guy, you know. So imagine, like, if astrologers are also going to other sciences, other disciplines, and doing collaborations with them, you know, then that's what astrology, I think, how it can work, you know. And so that's something that you know, I think about. And we're transmitters, you know, we are transmitting an ancient knowledge. You know, this knowledge it's universal, and it's very old. And so when we're reading, even though we may not realize it or not, we're actually doing something that's been practiced for so long, and still people are able to benefit from it. So yes, we're transmitters. We're bringing the ancient, as the Art Ensemble of Chicago used to say, we're bringing the ancient to the future. You know, yes, this is one of the things that we're doing. And, you know, so I look at Project Hindsight, and, you know, I think they're too Greco-Roman centered. They don't touch Egypt at all. They don't even, I mean, they look a little bit at some of it, but they don't, or they say it's too old. How can you, you know, but, you know, that's where the Greeks got their astrology from. The Greeks, and then the astrology, or let's say the cosmology that the Egyptians practiced, is different from what the Sumerians and the Mesopotamians did, because they dealt with the zodiac and the Egyptians didn't. They dealt with the risings and settings of the stars. You know, that's what they were focusing on. And the Mayans, they were focused more on Venus, you know. And so, you know, we have to, as Black astrologers, and some of us who are knowledgeable, because I've been studying Egyptology now for a long time, so I know certain things about it. I'm not an Egyptologist, but I know about it, you know. And so, you know, that's what we need to do. We need to bring forward, like, you know, like Nigerian concepts, and, you know, and Timbuktu, what's going on with that, you know, because Project Hindsight is only just touching part of it. And it's part of this Eurocentric thing that's been going on since the so-called Age of Reason, you know. And so this is what we need to do. I mean, like, So because my focus is art as a visual artist, and also Egyptology, these are the notions that I can bring to astrology, and vice versa, you know.
Yeah.
And then Leigh, I ain't got, I don't know nothing about pharmacies except, you know, well, I got to take this pill in the morning, you know. But you got it. I mean, you know, like that, you know,
Yeah.
and so all of us, we have something that we can bring to astrology, and also astrology we can connect to.
Yes. So we're all trying to crack that same egg from back pre-Egyptian to the future. And we all need to bring our ways to crack that egg together, right? So Stormie, curious your take on what helps you feel welcomed and have a greater sense of belonging in the astrological community, and how we can improve on inclusivity.
Yeah, I think that, first and foremost, what helps me feel welcomed is being grounded in myself and what I'm doing in whatever I call a higher power, that I'm connected to what I'm supposed to be doing. And that is the first place, because then I'm not waiting for someone to tell me that I am welcome and that I am valued and I am valuable and what I do matters, right? Like, I really do think that for me, that is a place where it comes from first. But also the other thing that makes me feel welcomed is showing up and putting my hands out and being a part of it. I have always been taught that you create the community that you crave. And I do that by showing up and saying, how can I help here? What do you need help with? What can I pick up? Right? Like, it's these kinds of things, because this idea that the astrology community needs to do absolutely anything to make me feel included, I think is insane. I think it is absolutely insane. And so having this space too, where I realize I am coming in and I am practicing this in a time where astrologers in general, we're a whole job code now. And that wasn't always the same. I'm coming in at a time where I went to NORWAC for the first time, and they said, it's never looked like this. It's never been like this. So I do feel the weight of being in a different wave of seeing that, but also realizing that if I want this community to look or to be or to have something, I'm responsible for bringing it and to nurturing it into its existence, and not waiting for someone who is the astrological community anyways. Let me just ask that, right? Who is that? And who decided what that is? Do you know what I mean? So it's like, we're kind of sketchy in the first place on some of that. We're just a bunch of people who have gathered together with a common thing that we believe can be helpful. And if I'm bringing my piece and showing up, trying to be of service, that's how I feel welcome. That's how I create the welcoming for the next astrologer who's been here for a long time and has something to share and couldn't, or somebody who's new and coming in, right? Like, just make space for all the astrologers to be here. But I will say this, I absolutely believe that the inclusivity, I don't know that we need to do more for people of color, of gender, of whatever. I would ask people to come up and come out and bring what you think we're missing before you judge that a space hasn't been set for you.
That's really powerful. Be a part of the change that you want to see in the world. Just do it. Just go out and do it. I'm hearing you say. Leigh, curious your thoughts, and then I've just got one more question for us to wrap up in the next four minutes or so.
Okay. Well, Stormie, that was really inspirational, and you've been walking the walk, talking the talk. One of the pivotal moments with my learning was your Kickstarter campaign. Like, that was amazing. And simultaneously, not only did you give recognition to other astrologers, impart learning to astrologers, but you held space for Black astrologers and were practicing what you're preaching. So it was just amazing. And Taylor, you're doing these podcasts, which is really important. I really enjoyed listening to several previous episodes and the people you have brought on to impart lessons to others. And then also, Amir, with your art, that was one of the first things I noticed about you when I joined the ISPA group on Facebook. So, it's just one of those things where it's inspiring to me. Where am I going to push this? What am I going to do? But showing up is the inclusivity you know? And I do feel like the duality there, because a lot of organizations have created scholarship programs I have benefited from. When you're coming up in a society that values the school system and kind of like a capitalist mindset, it can be hard to create and to learn. And I feel like sometimes when you're having that help with the scholarship programs, it's giving you space for that creation and also allowing people to come forward and share their vision. So, you know, I feel like this is a great time for me to enter into this world. I'm having a great time. And I think it's just important to keep sharing and keep realizing that you're the role model that other people need to see.
Yeah. Thank you, Leigh. That was really beautiful. So in 1 or 2 sentences, big challenge, what does it mean to you to be a Black astrologer, and what words of inspiration can you share with emerging astrologers? Stormie? On the spot, hot seat.
Yeah. So what does it mean to be a Black astrologer? I think in some really esoteric way, I get the privilege of wearing this shell this time and looking like some other people who look like me this time. And I get to do this job and have people who look like me see that they can do this job if they would like to come out and have this experience, or however they'd like to experience. Being an astrologer in general, to me, means that if I'm offered a microphone or a platform or a space or a consultation, that is my job to recognize the shoulders that my work was built off of, and that this divine person in front of me is as perfect as they can come, and serve that very, very well. That's what it means for me to be an astrologer in general. But being Black just means that maybe you look like me and you see that there's a space for us, and that's really very cool. Now, words of inspiration I can share is, oh my God, start your channel. You're never going to feel like it, so don't worry about how you feel. Start your channel, start your practice. Come on out here, get a mentor. With mentorship, we go further faster, right? Come talk to someone. You don't have to buy the 6-month package, but come talk. Amir is here, Leigh's here, Taylor's here, Steven's here. Come talk and let us pour into you, so that what you have to pour out is your version of this beautiful transmission made public. Because if you're an astrologer, you hear the call and it's annoying when you don't answer it. So just come out here anyway.
Yeah. Thank you. And Leigh, one sentence.
Okay. So being a Black astrologer, to me, like just outward facing, is another facet of my Blackness. And I think that's important to show the world. I feel like, especially in our American society and history, our identity has been so one-sided. And I feel like filling that out and encouraging people to learn a different way continues to expand those dimensions for what people might see at face value. And I think that's important. I think with all of us identifying with multi identities, like, it's helping show the world that that's who we are. We're not just Black, one-dimensional, stereotypical. And so being a Black astrologer, to me, means using ancient techniques to help heal, which again is important with that Chiron on the IC. I think it's pushing it forward.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think if I could share one thing, it's kind of in line with what Stormie said. Just do it. Just do it. Don't explain it away. If you're drawn to astrology, there's so many resources out there.
Great. And Amir, some words of inspiration and what it means to you to be a Black astrologer.
I think that, first of all, anybody who is Black and whatever they're engaged in is going to be meaningful and helpful to other Black people, as long as we're just talking about Black people. But now, in terms of what is astrology, what does it do for people? It helps people to find who they are and to trust that, and to be motivated and accept who they are. And that positivity then helps other people, because anything that you do, whether it's positive or negative, goes out in the universe. and whether it's negative or positive. So try to be positive. I think in my readings, I try to emphasize the positive. I try to be constructive, though. I'm not going to like say things that, well, yeah, you know, you don't have to pay attention to this struggle here or something. But actually, you know, if I can help somebody to understand who they are and to encourage that the expression of that self, then that's what I'm aiming for. That's my work when I'm reading to somebody. And so as a Black astrologer, then to help Black people who really, I mean, we just catching so much hell in this country, you know, in the world, really. If you look at the world, you know, we got it hard everywhere. And so like if a Black person is an astrologer or is a lawyer or whatever to help someone, you know, that is really a very important thing.
Yes. Thank you so much, Amir. Thank you, Leigh. And also thank you to Stormie, Grace. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for engaging in this conversation. I hope that it inspires people to ask critical questions, to come together, to join together, to find the things that we have in common more often than the things that we have that are different between us, and also to honor and celebrate those things that are different, because they help to contribute to the strengthening of our beloved practice and field of study that is astrology. And so hopefully this conversation today is something that can contribute to that. If you want to get in touch with any of us, I will have in the show notes and on my blog at taylorshuler.com more information about how to get in touch with any of us for readings, for art, for classes, for mentorship, etc. And again, just thank you so much. Happy Black History Month. And hopefully we can all do this again sometime. And also just a special thanks to the International Society for Black Astrologers, which is a group on Facebook run by primarily Demetrius Bagley and Samuel Reynolds. Thank you for putting that together, because this is how we were able to have this conversation and come together, was a post that I put on that group. And so just very grateful for you all. Yeah. All right.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you.
I'll see you again next time. Bye now.
Nice talking with everybody.
Yes.
If you enjoyed the episode, please take a second to rate and review. Each review helps us to find more heart-centered, forward-thinking folks just like you. Don't forget to take a screenshot, share it in your Instagram stories, and tag me at Taylor Shuler Astrology. If you're interested in an astrology consultation with me, you can book online at my website, taylorshuler.com. If you like my digs and you're looking for short-term furnished rentals because you're a digital nomad like me, or just because, don't forget to use the link in the show notes or code Taylor_C6I at hellolanding.com for $250 off your rental. See you next week.